All right, this is the key to section 2.3, part 1. And in number 1, you're given 2 points in a line, and you're asked to find the slope of that line. All right, so whenever you're given 2 points, we're going to use the slope formula. And the slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And keep in mind that as you use the slope formula, the order does matter. So in terms of your denominator, if you use y2 in the numerator first, you must use x2 in the numerator in the denominator first. Now, if you use y1 first, then you must use x1 first. Okay, so and the order does matter in terms of making sure that the first terms, the subscripts, do match up. Okay, now when using a slope formula, it does help to label these. So I'm going to label this x1, y1. This will be x2, y2. You don't have to, but it does help. So the slope then will be, let's start with y2. So negative 1 subtract a negative 4 divided by, since I started with negative 1, since I started with y2, I have to start with x2. So 4 subtract a negative 3. Negative 1 subtract a negative 4 means negative 1 plus 4. So remember, you add the opposite. Divided by, and then the same thing here, 4 subtract negative 3 means 4 plus the opposite of negative 3, which is positive 3. So negative 1 plus 4 is 3, and then 4 plus 3 is 7. So the slope is 3 divided by 7. Okay, now, if you were, notice the slope is positive, so if you were to actually graph that line real quick, just a rough sketch. So negative 3, negative 4 is in the third quadrant, and 4, negative 1 is in the fourth quadrant. And notice that when I connect those dots with the line, it is rising, so the slope is positive. So remember, the slope is positive, then the line rises from left to right. All right, now you didn't have to do this, but I just wanted to remind you about what this meant, what a positive slope means. Okay, again, do the same thing, x1, y1, x2, y2. So the slope then would be, let's start with y2, so 5 subtract a negative 2 divided by negative 1 subtract 4. Let's just get, remember, those you're subtracting. Y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. That should be x1 right here. All right, so then that's going to equal 5 plus 2 divided by a negative 5. A negative 1 and a negative 4 is a negative 5. So that's 7 divided by negative 5. So my slope is a negative 7/5. So if I were to graph that, this notice that the slope is negative, the line would fall. So 4, negative 2 is in the fourth quadrant. Negative 1, 5 is in the second quadrant. And notice that your line does fall from left to right. As you go from left to right, your line falls. So the slope is negative. Okay, over here, x1, y1, x2, y2. So the slope, remember, you subtract the y coordinates and subtract the x coordinates. Let's start with y2. So the order, remember, does matter in the denominator. So you'd say 2 subtract 2 divided by negative 3 subtract 5. Well, 2 subtract 2 is 0. A negative 3 and a negative 5 is a negative 8. And remember, 0 divided by any non-zero number is 0. So you must say 0. Slope is 0. Now let's see what that means if the slope is 0. What kind of line we get? Well, if I quickly just plot those 2 points and draw the line, 5, 2 is let's say here. Negative 3, 2, let's say is here. And when I graph that line, it's a horizontal line. And remember, the slope of a horizontal line is 0. Okay, next one. So if you notice all of these right here, all of these equations, they're in slope-intercept form. So this is slope-intercept form. And remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where the number you multiply an x by is called the slope, and the constant is called the y-intercept. That's where the graph crosses the y-axis. All right, so all these are in slope-intercept form. So here, y is by itself, y is by itself, y is by itself. You have to check for that. Now, in terms of the slope, it's whatever you're multiplying the variable by, so the coefficient of x. So the coefficient of x here is 3, so the slope is 3. Here, the y-intercept, remember B stands for y-intercept, the y-intercept is your constant, so the y-intercept is a negative 5. not 5, negative 5. That's why the graph across the y-axis. Over here, the coefficient of x is a negative 2/3. It crosses the y-axis at 7. Here, the slope is a negative 3. The coefficient of x is a negative 3. Since there's no number there, just like the word constants here, since there's no constant there, it's understood to be a 0. So the y-intercept is 0. So it's going to cross the y-axis at 0. In fact, that will be at the origin. All right. Okay, so number 3a, the slope of a horizontal line is 0 undefined. Well, we just talked about that. Slope of a horizontal line is 0. So that answer is 0. The slope of a vertical line is 0 undefined. Well, let's think about that. If you're not sure, look at a vertical line. So here's a vertical line right here. Let's say this point right here is 3, 4, and let's say this point right here is 3, negative 1. Okay? So there's your 2 points on this line. And if I use the slope to kind of deal with this, let's start with 4, y2. Let's make this y2. So you say 4 subtract a negative 1 divided by 3 subtract 3. Well, the numerator is 4 plus 1, which is 5. The denominator is 0. Well, remember, you can't ever divide by 0. Dividing by 0 is undefined. So, and if you put this in your calculator, you get an error. So the answer here is undefined. So the slope of a vertical line is undefined. The slope of a horizontal line is 0. What's the slope of y equal 5? Well, you have to recognize that the equation y equal 5, since there's no x there, y equal 5 is a horizontal line. Now, if you couldn't remember that, then let's think about what that means. Okay, so remember, that means that y always equals 5. So in my t-table, I'm going to have 5 all the way down my y column. And again, no matter what x is. So when I graph this, when I graph these points, 0, 5 is here, negative 1, 5 is here, and that's enough to graph this. Notice I get a horizontal line. So y equal 5 is a horizontal line. And the slope of a horizontal line is 0. Over here, since there's no y variable, you got to remember that's a vertical line. X equal 5 is a vertical line. And again, if you did not know that, then you would use a t-table, just like we did here. And remember, that means that x always equals 5. So in the x column, I'm going to have 5 no matter what y is. So when I graph this, here's 5, 0 right here. Here's 5, 1, and that's enough to graph this. And notice it's a vertical line. And we know that the slope of a vertical line is undefined. Okay? All right. So that's the key to worksheet 2.3, part